All right, let's get our Facebook folks in here before it's officially time to get out of here, or get the show going. Not get out of here, get started.
We're out of here.
Yep, man. Thanks, guys, for joining us. That's it today. Now, welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. It is Tuesday morning, the 20th of June, and it's time for an episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendell, and joined by, as always, on these morning shows, Scott Kennedy. Scott, how you doing? What's new? Are we going to have a cat appearance today?
We
Fingers
might.
crossed.
We might. If I'm by myself in the house, which I am right now, the cat gets a little vocal. So he might show up here. He's kind of out in the hallway playing mousey right now. So he might come in. I'll let him wave and say hi if he comes up. Big black cat. I have to move back to get him all the way in the screen. Good luck. Black cat is good luck.
I hope he does make an appearance, because it's always fun to see the pets. We keep our pets quarantined away from the recording area, from the basement itself.
I'd shut the door, but then he bangs on it and starts like howling.
Yep.
It's just better to risk having the door open.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And it's always good to hang out with the pets. Guys, let us know in the chat what you guys have as pets. Obviously, I have a golden retriever and a cat, and Scott has a cat and a dog as well. So
and
2 kids.
We're freaking Dr. Doolittle here. Yeah. Got a guinea pig. I've got we've got a leopard gecko for the summer also. So it's all, there's all kinds of stuff going on. Well, lots of fur.
Come see the Atlanta Zoo extension at the Kennedys. It sounds like a good time. Well, let's say hello to some people in the chat. Donald Willison coming in, who wanted us to call him Don or D. I can't remember, Don. You wanted us to call you something else. We appreciate you. And $5 Super coming in saying BFB, thanks. Shout out to you, Don. Thank you so much. Good morning to you. Hope you're doing well. Hope you had a good 3-day weekend, Juneteenth, celebrating and observing Juneteenth as well. Zach Powers in the house saying morning. Good to see you, Zach Powers. Hope you're doing well. Got our guy Ethan coming in across the pond saying good morning, gents in Broncos country. And we've missed you, Ethan. Thanks for reaching out over the weekend, saying hello, and glad to have you back and hanging out with us. Hope you're doing well across the pond. Jeremy Sean saying morning, boys. Welcome back. Looks like the national media's expectations for the Broncos are starting to shift. Have you seen anything about the Broncos' expectations starting to shift from the national media, Scott?
No, I just think the hot takes are softening a little bit. People are hedging their bets a little more. Like, maybe this team won't be awful. I've seen it with a couple of those teams that have been predicted pretty bad. We cover several teams with Team MHH, including Colts, Falcons, et cetera. And I think it's I think the rhetoric is softening a little bit. You don't have the Colin Cowherds out there. They've already expressed their outrage of, how can this be possible? This team's terrible. And that people are like, you know what? It's the NFL and anything is possible. So maybe it's calming down some. And then just people remembering that, hey, it's Sean Payton. This guy's a hell of a coach. And I've said it a zillion times. I'll say it a zillion more. People talk, well, he only won one championship in New Orleans. I can't express to spoiled, rotten Broncos fans how bad New Orleans was. Take this last 6 years and make it 40 years. That's what the New Orleans Saints were before Sean Payton.
Yeah, completely irrelevant. Just a joke franchise. And Sean Payton did a good job of turning them around. So we'll see what happens with the Broncos' expectations. I still feel like the expectations are probably right around 500 this year, but things can change. I haven't seen anything too drastic one way or the other, but that, especially after last season, playing a little bit safer.
500 is doubling your win total. Close to it. That's that would be a pretty good turnaround. Unless you think the last 6 years, the last year was an aberration, but it's hard to say last year was a complete aberration because of the previous 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So turning the ship around and you go, 9-8, I think, again, we've talked baseline, we've talked expectations, what would be bad, what would be good. And we've come up, around that 9-win mark would be, as far as, the over under on wins for this team.
Yep. That's what you're expecting this season, hanging right around 500. So hopefully we will see better than that. Hopefully we won't see worse than that, but got to see what everything looks like with Sean Payton here. So many dynamics have changed. How much last season was Russell Wilson? How much was Nathaniel Hackett? Unanswerable questions until we get more data here and the actual games start playing. Mark Schrader coming in, $10. Good morning to you, Mark, with the big super chat and the support here on this fine Tuesday morning. Thanks so much, Mark. Hope you're doing well. Always good to hear from you, and always good to see you on Facebook as well. So Mark coming over on YouTube, but we're Facebook friends. Tim Durr coming in saying good morning, Nick and Scott. What's good, Broncos country? Not too much is bad. So enjoyed the 3-day weekend and a shorter week this week. My parents flying out, so I won't be here after. God, I think I'm off this Thursday, right? They land Wednesday night. So
yeah, hell, I thought you were off today when I didn't see the stream built until 9:20 my time. I'm like, oh, I'll start doing something. I've already cut up the next video for. It's scheduled on YouTube for Broncos country. Little highlight from last night talking about worst to first.
And talking about worst to first, Daniel Swofford. I don't know what the transition is there, but Daniel's always first in our hearts. From first to first. Good morning, Daniel. He says, good morning, guys. Looking forward to see what you guys have for us today. What's your confidence level in the defense this year under Vance Joseph? As for pets, I have a 1.5-year-old golden retriever named Molly. Well, very cute. I am a very big fan of the golden retrievers, obviously.
Yeah, you're almost to the stage where you're going to have a dog instead of a demon at your house. Those 2 years on those big lab retriever types, the first 2 years is rough. It's tough. The first 6 months is really tough.
Yeah.
I've said to dogs, it's a good thing you guys are cute because you wouldn't make it to be dogs if you acted like this all the time. Puppies are a lot of work. And my guess would be Swofford.
Yeah. And a puppy, I mean, you miss them when they're smaller, though. Like, they get older, and it's like, oh, I kind of miss
that's why, because they're so cute and stuff. It's like, it's a good thing you're cute because you just ate something you weren't supposed to eat of mine and destroy. I never believed in creating. I'm not going to create a dog. And then I had a half lab, and he was eating my entire house. I'm like, okay, we're gonna either have to get you a crate or dig you a hole. So let's try the crate, and it works fine. My dog now, we just call it his house. We leave it open, and that's where he stays during the day. He just goes in there and chills.
Yeah. Well, cute. Always love to hear about the pets. And the other question, what's your confidence level in the defense under Vance Joseph this year? Out of 10, I'm going to give it a 6, which is not super high. But I think it's going to be pretty hard for Vance Joseph to replicate the defensive expectations that this team has set over the last 10 years. I mean, going from, we had those years, obviously, at Wade Phillips, where the defense was incredible. You did have the Vance Joseph's years where they step back a bit, but Vic Fangio had some pretty darn good defenses, especially considering the injuries that Vic Fangio's defense had. And then, shockingly, 1 year, there's questions about him, but he came in and was awesome, is your Evero last season as well. Mm-hmm. So my confidence with VJ is about a 6. I believe, for the most part, coordinators are only as good as their players. Really, what Hall of Fame coaches are only become Hall of Fame coaches if they had Hall of Fame players. So I have more questions about the defense than the actual coordinator, the players on the defense. But I put him about a 6 out of 10. I think it's going to be, he'll be okay this year, but I don't have big expectations.
So my question on this, my follow-up on this would be, relatively speaking. So relative to last year, keeping the level of defense last year over the course of the entire season based on personnel, what is your confidence that they can be as good as they were last year? Not, are they going to be a top 5 defense, the confidence level in that. At time, for a good bits of last year, depending on which category you looked at, they were a top 5 defense, but that's not where they quite finished. So taking a look at personnel, taking a look at new coordinator, what's your confidence level that they can maintain where they were last year, or at least be as good? See, for me, that's confidence level.
Yeah, I'm still
we're talking about that, and I feel pretty good based on the personnel there that this defense shouldn't be any worse than it was last year. I feel pretty good about that, Nick.
I think they will be as good, if not slightly worse, than last season, and part of the reason is I think this year the offense will be more competent and in a way that somewhat hurts the defense, where other teams are going to be a little bit more aggressive. I mean, we kind of saw it last season where the Broncos defense was playing good. And then when the offense finally starts to figure things out, other teams' offenses are like, oh, wait a second, we actually have to go out there and try to score now, rather than play, this keep away, ugly football that is working to beat the Broncos. So
yeah, and then you'd see the defense gave up this, gave it whatever. It's like, no, they wore down, and that was a game plan for the other teams. Like, well, we'll just hold them down until we need to go score at the end, and then they'll be worn out, and we can do it. We can go get a score, and I don't put that on the defense at all. It was one of the big contentious points I had during the season last year when I'd be in the background and they'd be talking about the defense giving up a score for the loss. And this one's on. I'm like, no, you cannot have 20 minutes of time of possession and expect your defense to come up big at the end of the game. It doesn't work that way. They held them to 17 points. You average 17, you should win a lot of ball games. I think it was like 13 for a while, wasn't it? The defense was strangling people.
Yeah, overall, though, I do think the defense will take a slight step back. I don't trust the personnel totally, especially on the defensive front all the way. And I also think Vance Joseph is a step back as a coordinator as well. Not big, but they tried Vance Joseph out there this last week. And a big talking point about it was just, how good he is with the guys. Not so much the X's and O's, not so much, putting guys in the best position to succeed, but, I hate to use the dreaded phrase leader of men because that one was beat to death when he was hired as the head coach here. But I think the defense will take a slight step back this season overall.
All right, so we can get into the topic here a little bit. We'll hit the chat, so I won't use this, but remind me. Let's come back to this so I don't forget it. Is you mentioned personnel? There's not a ton of personnel changes. So you ask yourself the question: is the defensive line worse with Zach Allen than they were with Draymond Jones? Maybe. And then how important was Deshaun Williams? And we talk about that war all the time. How easy is he replaced? Can you replace Deshaun Williams? Because that's really, who am I forgetting in the front? Who else have you lost?
Bradley Chubb and Baron Browning.
Yeah, Browning, okay, the injury there, and he was in and out of the lineup a lot last year.
And then
Bradley Chubb was first 11 games, not the last 6, and that's a big difference. Okay, I can live with that one. One of the questions I wanted to hit here from Dermeyer NFL. He says over under for KJ Hamler starting games. I'll say 0.5.
I was going to say 0.5 as well because we don't even know if he's going to make the team. Yeah. We're really pulling for him. We heard that he is living with Tim Patrick right now, and he was a second round pick. I think top 50 or right around top 50. I mean, talented kid when he's on the field, but he's been dealing with setback after setback in terms of injuries. So 0.5 I think is the bet on that one. I'd say right now he's fourth in the pecking order. But, he's got speed and he's got talent, so things could change. And I'm really pulling for him because he seems
only started 6 games in his career.
Yeah.
If we want to talk about starting games, now is he a number 3 receiver and is basically a starter in a 3 wide receiver set? That's a little different. But if you want to say as a pure starter, he didn't start any last year. He only started 2 the year before and 4 as a rookie. Mm-hmm. So as you start losing faith in your draft picks, guys that are on their way out the door, you see those numbers go from, they had their most production as a rookie because there was a big investment in them as a second round pick and they're getting the benefit of the doubt. And then they kind of play their way out of it. Injuries, obviously, we've talked about that a lot. But, if I had to take the bet right now, I'd set it at 0.5, which means you'd win with 1 start and I would win with 0 and I would take the under.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're pulling for him still, but the Broncos also, they made a big investment going and getting Marvin Mims, who I think one could argue would play a similar niche position to KJ Hamler. So again, very talented young player still, and Broncos have him underneath another year of control, and no such thing as too much speed out there. So if he can stay healthy, I think he'd find a role, but if he can stay healthy, he's carrying a lot of weight there. So we'll see. I agree with Scott, though, the 0.5 games, unfortunately for him, but God, again, pulling for him. That's just seeing is believing on that one. Tim Durr coming in saying, good morning, Nick and Scott. What's good, Broncos country? Hanging out with you guys. That's what's good. Good to see you, Tim. We got Robot of Doom. Said, good morning, gents. Good to see you. Mark talking about it. He says he has 3 dogs. Awesome. Zach Power says he's a 6-year-old, 110-pound chocolate lab. Absolute monster. Yeah, 110 pounds is big. Summit's about 80 pounds. Now, granted, we walk about 5 miles a day, so he gets a good amount of exercise and whatnot. But I feel like he's like bulky, big chest, big barrel chested, and 30 pounds heavier with that chocolate lab. That is an absolute monster. So hopefully it's a good one. And I also love Jeremy coming in saying he's got an 8-pound Cavapoo named Bear. Cute. Love that. About that. JR Capron saying Pitbull, Doberman, and 3 kitties for each of my children. Very cute. 1 cat for each kid. That's awesome. And Tim Durr saying they have a pug and a 15-year-old princess. So must be a daughter and a 15-year-old. Or is the pug 15 and also the princess? I can't tell if we're separated here. But cute. I love hearing about all these pets here. Matt Henry coming in saying, good morning, Nick and Scott. Good to see you. Chase Wellner saying, "Hey y'all, I think Ninja's making an appearance here in a second."
He's hunkering down. There's a it's either a jacket or a cover. And I hear him digging in. I could show you him, but I don't want to show you how messy the rest of my room is. He's hanging out here. He's hanging out. I thought he would with the he's a very social cat. He likes laps. He's a lap cat.
Yep. It's been about 50 degrees here in Seattle. I think we've been like teetering with some of the record colds for this time of year. And the cat has been all over me trying to snuggle up. Like, it's cold. I refuse to turn the heat back on. It's been about 62 degrees in the house here, but they've been snuggling up. We've been hanging out. It's been good. Greg Smith, good morning. Broncos for breakfast, Denver Broncos for life. Good to see you, Greg. We got Jerron Washington saying the Broncos will make the playoffs. The Broncos will beat the Chiefs, and he believes in Russell Wilson. Gosh, man, I hope you're right there. I was going to say, what's more likely, the Broncos making the playoffs or beating the Chiefs? I don't know. What do you think, Scott? More likely, playoffs or Chiefs? Playoffs or Chiefs?
Winning one regular season game isn't that big a deal.
No.
It's not like now beating the Chiefs in the playoffs would be slim. But you can get a team on. I mean, look at the 49ers. We talked about them last year. This is one of the best teams in the NFC. Who did they lose games to? The Broncos, 4 wins. The Bears, they have 3 wins.
Mm-hmm.
And the Falcons, 7 wins. They lose those 3 games. It's one of the best teams in the NFC. So regular season games, the fact that you haven't won is beyond statistical improbability that you've got a losing streak like this. So I would say beating the Chiefs once is more probable than making the playoffs, because winning 1 out of 17 games isn't do or die for a Super Bowl contender. If they lose one along the way, so be it. It's not that big. Making the playoffs is a big deal, and you're going to have to win at least 10 to do it. So I think, all odds aside of how improbable a streak like this is in the NFL, I would say beating the Chiefs once is more probable.
I agree with you. They did expand the playoffs, right? So you have a little bit better. Almost half the field does that, where the Chiefs have been pretty darn impressive playing the Broncos. But one game against the Chiefs, I'll take that. And we saw the Chiefs last year lose a game to the Colts, who finished worse than the Broncos last year. So anything can happen. But we're hoping the Broncos can be a little bit more competitive. It would be nice to see them beat the Chiefs for the first time since week 2, 2015. Goodness gracious. Talk about improbable. Bama X, good morning, Broncos country. Good to see you. Jerron Washington says, I'm happy to have Vance Joseph. We have the 5th best defense in the NFL. Only players that Vance Joseph knows is Justin Simmons and Josie Jewell. And Kareem Jackson was brought in underneath Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio's first year.
For some reason, I thought that he was. I remember him talking about him. Did he have him in a different place? The guys he knew. I thought there were 4 players and a couple, and it was more than just those 2 on defense. But
maybe Vance coached underneath Wade Phillips in Houston for a cup of coffee or something.
Yeah,
but
I think I remember him saying he was a fat kid when he started. I remember something pretty detrimental that he was joking about Kareem Jackson. So Tim says he had him in Houston. I thought I had them. So yeah, not here, but familiarity and only having, he hasn't been gone that long, and the turnover that you've got in this league is pretty astounding.
Yeah, without a doubt. So yeah, he must have been in that Wade Phillips staff in Houston for a number of years. So, and man, ties go back. It's pretty fun to talk about. Michael Ronquillo fun to talk about, hanging out with the stars, saying good morning, Nick and Scott and Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos and Buckham. Good to see you, Michael. Always see Michael on Twitter. Hope you're doing well. And Tim corrects there. The pug isn't the princess. The 15-year-old's the daughter. So it could have gone either way with the pug. I don't know, Tim. But shout out to your 15-year-old daughter as well. Congrats to you and your family. Always love hearing about you guys. Gary Palmer, 1999, big time super coming in this morning. Thank you so much, Gary. Says good morning, Nick and Scott. What have defenses looked like underneath Sean? I know that's situational, but there should be a trend. Defense is volatile in the NFL just in general, so it's pretty hard to see what a trend could be. He did have Dennis Allen with him for a number of years, and Dennis Allen has done a pretty darn good job as a defensive coordinator. We'll see how he'll do as a head coach. You guys probably remember Dennis Allen in Denver for a bit as well, before going on to be the Raiders head coach. Now he's the New Orleans head coach, but they've been pretty good. And I feel like the best seasons of defense on Sean Payton teams were ones that they were extremely opportunistic and took the ball away at a high level. They weren't always the best at stopping teams from points given up or yards given up, but they had a lot of splash plays and turnovers. So we'll see if that's a trend underneath Sean Payton. or if that's something that's, dependent on the personnel at the time and whoever the coordinator is and the personnel on both sides of the ball.
I'm
to
going to
be,
rip
to be
off some
honest.
numbers for you real quick. So sorry if
Okay.
this sounds like a phone number, but just going through the years in points per game, starting from oldest to newest: 13, 25, 26, 27, 13, 31, 4, 28, 32, 31. That's where you go to playoffs and don't win games. Those were 3 straight 7-9 seasons, all on the defense there: 28, 32, and 31. And then when they started 11-5, 13-3, 13-3, and 12-4, in his last years there, their defensive ranks were 10, 14, 13, and 12. And then they were 4-9 last year as well. So it evolved. They probably put some more money into some more resources into the defense. Defense got better. So the different hires and the coordinators and stuff, but wild swings in the defensive points given up. So and for me, I guess the early years biased me a little bit because I never thought of the Saints as really having a great defense. But that has really changed in the last 7-8 years.
Yeah, they've had a pretty darn good defense underneath Dennis Allen. A lot of good cover one stuff. I mean, Cam Jordan out there doing good stuff. Obviously, Marshawn Lattimore. They've been a pretty good on that side of the ball for the last few seasons, at least. So will be interesting to see how they emphasize it and prioritize it, not only the immediacy, but going forward. I mean, this offseason, Broncos made some splash plays on the defensive side of the ball, but really this was more about gearing up the personnel on the offense. And is that going to be the case pretty much going forward underneath Sean Payton? I don't know. We'll find out. They made a big move on Zach Allen, but other than that, I mean, it was an offensive centric offseason.
And Nick, you mentioned the high risk, high reward team. They were 1 in points and 1 in yards on offense when they won the Super Bowl in 2009. They were 20 in points, but number 3 in turnovers per game.
Yep.
So it's like, you know what? We'll give up some points. We're going to take it away. And if you give the ball back to our offense, you're in trouble.
Yep.
We get a couple extra possessions, you can score yours. We'll score every time we've got the ball. And that was a pretty dangerous team.
Yeah, I just remember that Super Bowl winning team having a very good ability to take away the football.
Right.
Not good at stopping anybody, but damn, they were hunting the ball. And if you got the ball to the offense, good field position too.
Number 1 in points and yards. And okay, I'm giving up points per game, but I'm getting more possessions than you, and I've got the number 1 offense.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good. That's still a pretty good recipe.
It's hard to bank on that overall because we talk about defense being
why they never won another one.
Yeah. Especially turnovers can be extremely volatile year to year, but the good ones can still replicate that and even get the finest margin. I mean, you see it with the Bill Belichick New England teams. Defense is volatile, but somehow they consistently have a top 10 defense. Well, you can scheme it still. Not easy, but the great ones can. Richard Miles coming in saying good morning. Good to see you. Got Cristiano coming in saying good morning, friends. Joining late, but happy to get you live. Beating the Chiefs at Denver, more probable than playoffs. Playoffs? Yeah, anything can happen. Maybe we can have both this year. That'd be great. Philip Hogginson coming in saying morning, everybody. Good to see you, Phil. Hope you're doing well. Jerron Washington comes and said, our schedule isn't that bad. The games that will be challenging are the Chiefs, Jets, Bills, Chargers, and Lions. Hope we beat the Jets so we can give Nathaniel Hackett a taste of his own medicine. I don't know what Nathaniel Hackett's medicine is, but it wasn't very good last year. And yeah, I definitely needed some of that, or aspirin or something. Baby aspirin is with chest pains in there going on. But we have it'd be great to beat the Jets, not just because of Nathaniel Hackett though, but God, I'd love to beat Aaron Rodgers. I'm just so tired of Aaron Rodgers overall. Just the whole thing of him maybe coming to Denver, not coming to Denver, having family that is Green Bay fans. It's just like, Rodgers, I'm done with you, buddy. Like that's enough.
Yeah, and it's done. That's over. Yeah. He'll probably finish his career with the Jets. 2 years, maybe 3, maybe 1, and they'll be done. And then we can remember him for the great player that he was, instead of the media drama BS the last 3 or 4 years, because he's just a phenomenal talent.
Yeah, he's been a little exhausting, and he wasn't that great last season playing on the field as well. So I'm curious to see how it works out from a football perspective. We kind of predicted
that one going in, though, remember?
With the Jets.
I mean, he's coming off an MVP season, and we're still like, listen, the entire offense is predicated on we're going to build a defense, and Rodgers is going to score us points. Mm-hmm. Well, you get to the playoffs then against other good teams. I kind of think of it like the Atlanta Braves and their pitching staffs, they went all pitching. Well, pitching, you know, in their years when they were winning a lot of division titles, but not a lot of playoff series, it's because they were going all pitching, which was great for the regular season. But when you got to the playoffs, everybody had pitching. You know, most teams making the playoffs, they can all play defense. So you're getting beat by teams that are more balanced. So I wasn't totally surprised. I think we said the Packers and the Dolphins were the two biggest overrated teams going in, and the Dolphins were good. They were a little too dependent on Tua being healthy, though.
Yeah. Yeah, that balloon popped. The carriage turned into a pumpkin there, with Tua halfway through the season. Granted, he kind of got smashed into a pumpkin too. But we have Lawrence Rivera coming in here saying, "What's up, guys? Got to get my bean dirt juice." Okay, there we go. What's going on? Still small. Well, you better get on it, Lawrence. Appreciate you. Scott's got his perk going on there.
It's gone. I've drained it already. I started too early.
Yeah, that's just time for a second cup then. J.R. Capron is saying, if the defense doesn't play up to standard, do you see the team doing anything with Vance Joseph? I think it'll be interesting to see if the defense falls at all, what they do with Vance Joseph. And it's not just because of Vance Joseph maybe not living up to expectations, but I think that Denver maybe has a potential superstar coach on the defensive side of the ball, a young ascending coach in Christian Parker, who the Broncos maybe will not want to get rid of. So that would be really interesting to see if, let's say, Vance Joseph's only okay. Well, listen, Vance, we appreciate you being here, but we don't want to lose Christian Parker. We want him to be our defensive coordinator. So see ya, Vance. Good luck elsewhere. And we're promoting within. And got Donald Wilson coming in talking about it as well, saying it's on an article about Vance Joseph replacement, Christian Parker. Would you say Vance Joseph loses his job regardless? We need to see what it looks like, but Parker is an ascending star, and he's going to be a defensive coordinator at some point in the next 3 years. I'd be shocked if he wasn't, and you might want to keep him.
And the other discussion was Dennis Allen. You know, the Saints are coming off a 7-10 season with Dennis Allen. If that doesn't improve and they're, bottom half of the league again, then there's a pretty good guy that he worked with that would need a redemption project as well. You see these guys go from head coach back to coordinator, back to head coach. Happens a lot, unless they're 65 years old when they get their first head coaching job. So it happens a lot. So there will be candidates out there internally and externally, possibly. But, I don't think anybody's rooting for Vance Joseph to fail, obviously.
No.
And he's got a chance to come in. He got hired because he was a good coordinator. That's how that's how you get the head coaching job. So again, I feel pretty good. And let's get into the topic here a little bit, about the strengths and weaknesses of this team. And Lawrence, thank you for the stars. Appreciate that. But going back to, how the team finished, and they kind of ran out of bodies. Is the personnel, do you think the personnel is lesser than it was last year as far as, on the defensive side of the ball?
I think it's about the same, but maybe slightly lesser just because I trust the bodies less on the defensive front at the defensive line and at the edge position. Last season, I think the Broncos had decent health with some of the interior defensive lines specifically. I mean, Mike Purcell has had a history of injuries here, and he stayed relatively healthy and had some impact out there. DJ Jones played, I think, the highest volume of snaps he has in his career, and he stayed healthy out there. After that, though, it's a big question mark on this defense. Zach Allen has dealt with injuries in his career today. Last season was a big coming out party for him, but that's partially because he hasn't been fully 100% the years prior. So that's one that concerns me. And then we can get into the question marks galore at the edge spot. I mean, Randy Gregory, over under 6 games for him. Nick Benito, does he take a step forward? Baron Browning, do we see him at all this season? What does this injury look like after getting the knee surgery? What does Frank Clark still have in the tank? So I think overall the defensive personnel is pretty much the same, similar, but I have big time question marks along the defensive front.
Yeah, I agree. I would think if you're talking about personnel wise, I think it may have taken just a slight step backwards because you poured a bunch of your resources into the offensive side of the ball, which is probably the smarter thing to do, Nick. Yeah. I think we talked about, how does this team get better? If I could take one player other than a quarterback and place them somewhere, I think we all kind of agreed it was the offensive line somewhere. I said center.
Mm-hmm.
An all-pro type of center would make this team that much better, or at least a top 10 guy, not necessarily a Myles Garrett. Bringing in Aaron Donald or a Myles Garrett, but those are different guys. I mean, just on average, a top 10 type of guy. Where does he come in? But you look at who you lost and who you brought in, and I think realistically, you're looking at maybe a 1-for-1 swap in the first year for Zach Allen and Draymond Jones. Draymond Jones was pretty darn good for this team. Can Frank Clark be as good when he plays? I don't think he's going to play as many snaps as Bradley Chubb. I think he can. I think you can get that type of production. Question again at the other side of the edge is you're replacing there, but you haven't upgraded in other spots. So Drew Sanders, okay, but are you better in the interior line? Like we've talked about. I don't see a way where unless Ozarike makes that big jump from year 1 to year 2, which we have seen, Nick. We have seen interior linemen do that. I don't see where the personnel is better on your interior defensive line than it was last year. And last year it wasn't great. It was okay, but it's a concern. It is a concern coming in.
Yeah, just the depth, the talent, the body types. I mean, a lot of times you can, not to be, utterly beauty pageant obsessed like a lot of these front offices are, which sometimes we can make fun of a little bit, but this Broncos team is not body beautiful along the defensive.
Not selling jeans, Nick.
Yeah, but I mean, like you talk about the first guys off the bus on the defensive line. Right now, it's Randy Gregory. They just don't have those.
We had that discussion. I think it may have been me and Eric. I said, "Who are your first two guys off the bus?" We said Mike McGlinchey and Eric, and I said Randy Gregory.
Yep, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, you talk about like just those type of guys are born, not built. A lot of those like defensive front, difference makers. And right now, I just don't know if the Broncos have that. They have guys who are good players, no doubt. DJ Jones, squad, flows the role and plays really well for what he is, but he's not somebody who the other team is like, okay, this guy is an absolute game wrecker that we have to change our scheme for to stop. I just don't see many of those guys on the defensive front right now. I think you have a lot of complementary solid pieces, what you need, but the only one I see right now as a potential like game takeover type is Randy Gregory, and you can't trust him at all. So that's one that's going to concern me. I do think it fits well, luckily for the Broncos and how their team is built right now, to be a little bit, if you're going to be weaker anywhere, be weaker on the defensive line because of, God, take me out of context now, I'm going to sound stupid, but Vance Joseph is a very blitz-centric coordinator, and the Broncos were the 4th highest blitz team in football last season, and they're much stronger on the secondary. So I think they can somewhat scheme away some of the weaknesses in terms of personnel when it comes to creating pressure on opposing offenses. With numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And just like versatile players that you have here. I mean, Drew Sanders is versatile. Jonathan Cooper is versatile. Zach Allen, inside, outside, versatile. But a lot of the pressure is going to have to come from smart scheming and situational setups versus the actual, I have a guy I'm setting up one-on-one, and I know if I get a one-on-one with him, he's winning that matchup.
Mm. Yeah, which is a nice feeling when they have to scheme against your guys. Instead, you're worried about confusion. How long will that take to put in? I don't think it'll be too much different. Vance Joseph, again, they blitzed so much last year that just having some different players in order to come in and do that, it's a lot of the same guys. That's why I said I don't think this defense should take too big of a step back. Drake Wally, appreciate you coming in, Drake. Drake is also writes for the Colts site on SI. You see up that in the corner says SI Mile High Huddle. Drake is a really good Colts content provider and comes in and chips in over here as well. So thank you, Drake.
Thanks, Drake.
So hey there, fellas. Always felt this year with Payton that Denver could bounce back with some power. What are your record predictions? I'll say a solid 10-7. We did this, and I think I came right in at 9-8, 10-7, somewhere in there as we went through. It seems like the schedule is top heavy. So you've got to survive those first 6 games were tough. I just had it open. I'll bring it back here in a second, but it feels like the schedule was top heavy to me. But I think that's a good estimate. What's the over under in Vegas was 8.5, if I'm not mistaken, Nick.
Yep. Right around 500. So I think 10-7, that'd be slightly above expectations for this team based on the national perception. But yeah, no, the Broncos definitely could be in that area. 10-7. I'm going to still say 9-8 for now, just to be a little bit safer with that one, but certainly possible. We'll see what happens with the Broncos. I mean, this could be a team that completely is revolutionized this season, going from Nathaniel Hackett to Sean Payton, and Russell Wilson having a wake up call, focusing more on football than celebrity stuff. Things could turn around rapidly, but
Yeah, and
I got to see it to believe it.
maybe I'm thinking of somebody else because it doesn't look all that top heavy to me.
It was
Um,
it was more towards like the middle part of the season. Like they have the Chiefs, Packers, Chiefs. That's a weird one, and they have some tough
yeah,
games.
maybe that was what it was because you open up Raiders and Commanders at home. Okay, well, if you want to be a playoff team, you need to win those two games.
Yeah.
At Dolphins is no gimme. 2-1, you probably favored first, so you'd be a dog on the road. At Chicago Bears, Chicago's getting some love, but they got a long way to go. That's a winnable game. New York Jets at home, tough, but winnable. You're talking 3-1. At Chiefs is tough, 3-2. Green Bay Packers at home, you're talking 4-2. And why not beat the Chiefs at home, 5-2. At Buffalo, 5-3. Minnesota at home. So you've got a lot of these tough games at home. Minnesota at home, Browns at home, at Houston, at Chargers, at Detroit. There were 3 in a row there, but a couple of those we shouldn't lose all 3 of those games. Patriots at home, Chargers at home, at Raiders. It's manageable. It's a manageable schedule. Appreciate you, Drake, coming in. There's a couple strings in there where you're going to beat somebody that maybe you shouldn't, and you're going to lose to somebody maybe you shouldn't, especially when you've got those back-to-back road games. Where did that come in the season? So you're talking, week 13, 14, and 15. Houston should be a win. You got them first at least, and then maybe you go to the Chargers and you lose that one, and you go to Detroit and win that one. But if you can go 2-1 out of that stretch, that's one of those where each one of those teams is beatable, but all 3 on the road, you don't want to go 1-2 on that one. 2-1 would be a good spell in the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out this year, and just the ebbs and flows, and who can stay healthy. When does it click? Hopefully they can. When does Javonte Williams back? Hopefully they can get hot to start, because that's been over the Broncos' recent losing, perpetual suckage that we've seen here for 6 years. They have started decent and then fallen off, but at least when you start decent, you have some intrigue carrying forward, rather than like starting off 1-6 and season's already over. So hopefully a hot start, and we can see what goes from there. Troy Bauer coming in here, $9.99, saying, "Hey guys, how will Vance Joseph and Joe Vitt mesh? Do you think Joseph has really adapted his defense?" I think that they're trying to run specifically listening to Vance Joseph's press conference. He's picking up a lot of coverage stuff and different ideas, working with, again, Christian Parker, who we talked about earlier. So I think you're going to see some ideas of the match quarters and cover 3 and cover 1 kind of looks that we were seeing specifically under Giro Evero, and how that matches up and meshes with a more blitz-oriented defense up front, because you have to think about how the coverage matches with the run defense and the run fits and the pass rush. And I think you can see that here with Christian Parker working with him. So I've been happy to hear about that. As far as the relationship between Joseph and Vitt, I'm not sure. I think Vitt's a little bit more here to be an overseer of the defense, help Sean Payton as well, somebody that Sean Payton trusts, where Joseph's still running the show and he can turn to Vitt if he needs to. But I don't know about that's just pure speculation on the relationship there between Vitt and Joseph.
And I would think a young coordinator like Vance Joseph would adapt year to year. It's not just you can't just be married to one scheme, because then you can get figured out. You're always going to have some tendencies. You're always like, okay, I like bringing pressure. This guy's a little more aggressive than that guy. But yeah, Troy, and appreciate the support coming in this morning. Speaking of pets, since that's how we started the show, I think Vance Joseph would be adaptable year to year based on who he's got out there.
Yeah.
So if he's got a healthy Randy Gregory, he's going to run his defense a little bit differently than he would if he didn't. Yeah. So I expect him to adapt to the players that are available and what he sees, and hopefully some of these young guys step up as well.
Yeah, and talking about guys stepping up, listening to or reading Mike Evans' piece here over on Mile High Huddle. I will drop that in the comments there for you guys, so you can check it out as well. And it's Mike comes in and says pretty much what we're all thinking here about the Broncos defense, being the number one thing is their secondary. Obviously, you have Pat Surtain and Justin Simmons, 2 all-pro level talents, arguably the 2 best players at their single positions in the NFL, both in the same unit on a team. I mean, that makes the defense a pretty obvious one that stands out. But Broncos also have some young, intriguing, exciting players as well on the defensive side of the ball. Opposite corner, boundary corner, you got Damari Mathis taking on Riley Moss. That sounds like it's been a pretty interesting battle there during a mandatory mini camp. So we'll see how that plays out. You got Kwan Williams back, who is one of the best nickel cornerbacks in football last season. I think Pro Football Focus had him ranked 8, but gave him a lot of credit for playing the most nickel snaps in football. And also,
Loved him.
yeah, I mean, he's tenacious. I don't like that he switched to 8. I think he switched his number to 8, which I don't think is going to look great on a cornerback there, but it's whatever. But Kwan Williams out there, and also giving some credit to Caden Stearns. So the Broncos secondary, definitely the straw that stirs the drink, maybe for the entire team. Will be interesting, though. I'm so intrigued by what the battle looks like on the boundary between Mathis and Riley Moss. And we talked about earlier, Sean Payton's defenses, a lot of defenses on his teams have been very opportunistic. And Riley Moss made a career at Iowa being opportunistic and taking the ball away. So we'll see what happens with that spot. But that's probably one of the most fun battles that we're going to watch here with training camp coming up here soon.
Yeah, and the good thing is, you mentioned 4 guys, and if they battle for a spot, I think they're all going to get on the field a lot. You're going to see 4 cornerbacks a lot. I mean, that's just a base dime package. Yeah. Well, dime is base a lot of times these days, Nick. Yeah. In this pass-happy league, depending on who you're playing against, you're going to see a lot of 4 corner sets and rotation, 3 corners with a sub, having guys coming in and out. So it's almost important to make sure you've got some more down the line too. You're going to need 6 corners to get through a season if they all stay healthy. So I'm looking forward to seeing those guys as well. We know Mathis has a little bit of swagger to him, which I like. And you just mentioned Riley Moss, who you watched him a lot more than I did as far as this, boom or bust coverage. Is he kind of in the Diggs mold, or is he a little more conservative than the guy who gives up the most yards but has the most interceptions?
It's so hard to say because of what Iowa's defense asked of them. They never really put them in situations where they were going to have to play reactionary catch-up kind of stuff. It was, keeping everything in front of you and then driving on the football with some quarterbacks with not necessarily NFL arms out there in the Big Ten West, especially playing in the elements. So it's hard to say how those Iowa cornerbacks will do in transition. Moss has shown pretty good athlete, good ball skills, smart player, good tackler. I mean, all things that are good, but Iowa has not had a good pipeline of cornerbacks to the NFL here recently, I think partially because of the scheme. They're put in an opportune situation to protect them. So we'll see it out there, but I'm a little bit still waiting to seeing is believing with Riley Moss out there. But did want to shout out, you mentioned the depth of the cornerback position. Would be remiss if we didn't mention Essang Bassi, the backup nickel. Apparently he's been having had a pretty good mandatory minicamp. And also Jaquan McMillan, who last season, I think week 17, week 18, had a hell of a game. Undrafted free agent last year. Apparently he's built on last season as well, has been making some plays out there for the defense as well. So it seems like the secondary has some good people. And again, we're talking, this young cornerback, this young safety guy, this young secondary player, Christian Parker. He's getting his hands on some of these guys and apparently doing some good things with them. So again, just keep an eye on the name Christian Parker this season. I think we're going to talk about him a good bit.
Yeah, talked about him as future. We're already ushering Vance Joseph out the door for this guy, for goodness sake. Yeah. So let's play a snap here first. But yeah, this team right now is back to front, which is a little backwards for an old guy like me, but it's a different game. It's a 7-on-7. It's a passing league. There's not too many teams that you're going to go around that are just going to try and run it down your throat. And you're not matched up with the AFC North this year. So that helps a lot. Moving into the middle, how much depends on, the difference from last year. You had steady on the inside linebacker position. That's not a bad thing. It's not. When you're getting, 300 tackles out of 2 guys and a turnover here and there, they're doing their jobs. It's kind of what you're asked of the inside linebacker position these days. Mm-hmm. But you do have some upside there in Drew Sanders, who could be moved around into several different positions. It wouldn't surprise me, Nick, to see him up on the line of scrimmage a lot over the course of the season. And then we had high expectations for Jonas Griffith based on the small sample size in 2021. And then an early injury cut his season short in 2022. How can he come back? Because he is big and he is fast. Two pretty good things when you're at the linebacker position. So I like what the Broncos will be able to put on the field at inside linebacker, even if it's not, again, how many inside linebackers out there are you like, oh yeah, that's the guy on defense that is, the straw that stirs the drink. This isn't the 80s anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see what happens with that. And Anthony Edwards, I don't know if this is breaking news coming in, but he says, love the Kareem Hunt signing. I haven't seen anything about that for the Broncos. You guys can let us know if that happened. I don't think I've been that much off the grid here that something like that happened. Maybe you got fooled there, Anthony, but maybe you're breaking news. I don't know what's going on there. As Scott looking to confirm it there, Mike Evans' piece, he continues on, and the defensive line is listed as the weakness of this team. We talked about it already, but outside of DJ Jones on that interior, it's a big question mark all across the board. Zach Allen, he's going to be, sounds like an inside-outside kind of player, so not completely an inside guy that can help cover up some of the concerns there, but a little dabbling a little bit of both. He might be the biggest wild card on the entire, that can't be true. Randy Gregory is the biggest wild card on the defense. But after that, I mean, Zach Allen is right up there as well. I mean, he could completely potentially solve two issues on this team if he's good enough inside and outside for what they paid him too. But just a guy that we need to see what it looks like and if he can stay healthy.
Yeah, and Anthony, I don't see that news out there unless it had just happened in the last 5 seconds, and I don't see that out there. But Samaje Perine is a similar type of player that you could absolutely love. Someone who is a kind of a number 2 and will get his chance to possibly be the lead guy for Denver. I always think of, I'm sure there are more examples of that, but I always think of Michael Turner deputizing LaDainian Tomlinson. LT was a pretty good player. There's that didn't take anything away from Michael Turner when he finally got his shot. When Michael Turner ended up being the number 1, he was a monster. So you're hoping that depending on what happens with Javonte, how early he is there, but at the very least, you've got good depth and a two-headed monster at running back. So appreciate the stars, Anthony. Good to see you this morning.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I would not be against the Kareem Hunt signing, but you got Ezekiel Elliott still out there, Leonard Fournette still out there, Dalvin Cook still out there, Kareem Hunt is still out there. There's still some running backs available. So we think can be a little bit patient there and see what happens, see what's going on with Javonte Williams. Keith Brugman saying, how much does having a poor offense give defense better stats and rankings? It depends. But a lot of times, especially if you're playing that suffer ball that we saw from the Broncos, as Scott liked to call it a few years ago with Vic Fangio, that can artificially deflate what you're putting out there in terms of defensive points per game and whatnot. It's kind of like if you're playing a really high, it's what is it? Was it the Princeton offense? Where
it's a 4 corners offense where you're taking forever and before the shot clock era, and all of a sudden you've got the number 1 scoring defense in basketball. Well, that's because you also had the least amount of possessions, and you want to start talking about and Nick likes to point out the efficiency rankings, how good were you per possession, per play, et cetera, et cetera. So you can there's ways to keep the score down, but you're not going to have much scoring either. So the total points in the game are going to be down. But what's your points per possession? And then the yardage on that is where sometimes this comes in, Keith. If I'm going 3 and out pretty quickly and I'm punting the ball and the team's getting the ball on the 40 or further up every single time, they've got short fields. So gave up 4 touchdowns. We've only given up 160 yards. Okay, great. Turnovers, again, another short field issue. When you're turning the ball over and you're not moving the ball to flip the field, the yards per game will get skewed. So there's a lot of opportunities where that happens. But, the other part of it is a poor offense. Typically, you will see if the offense is giving the ball up in short fields, the defensive rankings on scoring will get worse. Yards can be better because you're on short fields, but your points on scoring. I remember, I think it was the 98 Auburn Tigers team. Their defense was phenomenal. And I considered a 3 and out and a punt without losing yardage a win for that offense. Nick probably just watched this last year with the Iowa Hawkeyes.
Punting is winning.
So good that a 3 and out and a punt instead of, losing 15 yards and or fumbling was pretty standard. So there's different ways around it. And depending on, you say a poor offense, depending on what they're doing, how are they poor? Are they turning it over a lot? Are they not, scoring in the red zone? That's one thing versus not converting third down and moving the ball. So it's cyclical.
Yeah, without a doubt. So we'll see what they do this year. And we got Anthony Edwards coming in saying fake news have been bamboozled. Great show this morning, guys. Well,
You're not the first. You won't be the last, Anthony.
nope, it'll probably happen to me at least twice today. So appreciate you, Anthony, coming in with the back-to-back supers theirs. And that's going to have to wrap it on up today. We're at 50 minutes now, and that's about what we're getting at to these days. I know that Chad, still wants, 30, 40, whatever, but we have a pace here. We got a rhythm. So it's fine. It's fine. We appreciate you guys coming in. And then we wouldn't have Anthony. If we went 30 minutes, we wouldn't have Anthony coming in and correcting himself and redeeming himself there with the calling himself out the fake news. So we appreciate that.
Redeemed yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. The good to see you, Anthony. Good to see everybody coming in and join us today. A lot of names that we recognize, of course. We had Lawrence Rivera was in the house. We had Michael Ronquillo in the house. Shout out to you with your super chats. Troy Bauer coming in. Drake Wally. Appreciate you, Drake. I hope you're doing well. I know we had Gary Palmer in the house. Mark Schrader was also in here. Daniel Swafford. Good to see you. Don Willison. I mean, you guys are killing it today. For a Tuesday morning in between mandatory mini camp and training camp, whatnot. Not a lot of news. Okay, real quick. I see a question here from Peter, and Peter asked nicely, thoughts on JL Skinner this season, Broncos 6th round pick. And then also we have another big super, so I guess we're not getting out of here just yet. But JL Skinner, I think this season JL Skinner is trying to make the team as a special teams difference maker and probably a specialty player that's going to be a big body box safety in certain packages. I don't see him playing the 2 split high safety. I don't see him playing free safety. But in the roles where you're looking for a pure dimebacker type, a third safety in the field that's playing the box, I think there's a role for him. He's going to have to prove that he can take on blocks and get off of them and diagnose them pretty well. He's got a better body type for it, but that doesn't make him better in the box and playing physical than our guy, Kwan Williams, who is unbelievable, actually close to the line of scrimmage. So definitely a role for him, but easiest path, year one, special teams. Make yourself valuable, indispensable on special teams. From there, good things can happen.
Yeah, I was thinking someone in that 3rd and 3 range where he comes in, where it could be run, could be passed, but it's going to be short, and his length and ability to then enforce, be a run stopping enforcer would help get him on the field. So I like JL Skinner. I think that was a bargain type of pick, good value pick. And Lawrence comes in with some stars. Thank you, sir. Lawrence, Michael, and Keith coming on, holding up the Facebook side on stars today. Thanks to all of you. He said it's so hard to base players off stats sometimes because teams will try and pad them to ship off stats, and we've been tricked for a while. Stats are, I think football is the least dependent on stats to determine who is a good player or not. When I was scouting players, I didn't look at high school stats. No one cares. It's fun to put them in there. This kid ran for 2,500 yards in 10 games. Okay, that's nice. But it doesn't really tell me what tells me he's a good high school back, tells me that they're running all over their opposition, could tell me that nobody's laying a finger on him. You've got different schemes, and it's such a dependent teamwork game that you could throw for a bunch of yards, but who are you playing against? Everybody else is playing a wing tee. So stats for football do not translate like they do in other sports, Lawrence. And what always translates for us, DWI guys coming in red hot. Great to see you. Thank you so much for the support, Ethan, as always.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ethan. That's big time. You wanted to get a shout out too. Good to see you, Ethan. Thank you so much. Tim says it has to be the stash. Got to rock the stash while the wife is away, because my wife is away. She's not a big fan of it, but that's okay. It's a lot of fun. We also got Michael Ronquillo coming back in saying, great show today, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos and Buckham. Thank you so much, Michael. We appreciate you. Appreciate everybody coming in. Going to be a lot of fun to watch what this team can do. Appreciate everybody joining us on this Tuesday. Make sure you're following Scott on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell MHH. Also follow us at BFB_pod, as well as at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as the ticker shows there underneath, if you're joining us on YouTube today, or you have a YouTube account, or ever even heard of YouTube, please join us on there. Subscribe to Mile High Huddle. Click the like button, the thumbs up on the way out the door. And we'll see you guys again tonight. I'll be back again tonight with Carl on building the Broncos, BTB_pod. So, yeah, any final thoughts, Scott, before we close on up and get on out of here?
No, just good to see you. Really good, since I wasn't totally sure we were having a show today. So I'm up and ready. I had already started kind of mentally moving on to other things, but it's pretty easy to get back into pod mode with a great group like this.
Yeah, it's always a lot of fun. We'll see you guys again tonight. I'll see you again tomorrow morning. But until then, make sure you continue to choose kindness and compassion. And as always, go Broncos.